Away from Oyo State to the National Assembly, where President Bola Tinubu presented a 49.7 trillion naira appropriation bill to a joint session of the National Assembly for the 2025 fiscal year. The appropriation bill, tagged Budget of Restoration, prioritizes defense and security, infrastructure, education, and health.
Key priority areas: rebuilding Nigeria. Our budgetary allocation underscore this administration's strategic priorities, particularly in advancing renewable agenda and achieving its developmental objectives. The highlights of the 2025 budget allocations: defense and security, 4.91 trillion naira. Infrastructure, 4.06 trillion naira. Health, 2.48 trillion naira. Education, 3.5 trillion naira.
President Tinubu spoke on the giant strides the current administration has recorded in the last 18 months. He also acknowledged the pains brought about by some of the government's policies. He describes the tax bills as vital to reforming the nation's tax system.
The time for lamentation is over. The time to act is now. It's a time to support and promote greater investment in private sector. A time for our civil servants to faithfully execute our policies and programs. It is a time for every Nigerian to look hopefully towards a brighter future, because a new day has dawned for us as a nation. As your president, I remain committed and resolute to continue to lead the charge.
We are staying with the developing story, which is the 2025 budget estimates presented by President Bola Tinubu to the National Assembly earlier today. And some of my colleagues are joining me on the news. Business editor Tolulokpa Ogunjobi is here with me in the studio. Joke Adisa is joining us from Abuja. She is a National Assembly correspondent. Also, our State House correspondent, Femi Akonde, will be joining us from the nation's capital. Let's begin with you, Tolu. This budget has been described as ambitious. Almost 50 trillion naira.
Yeah, that's a lot. Well, it's interesting when you look at, first, the budgeting cycle, January to December cycle that President Tinubu has decided to follow. It's brilliant. That is what investors want to see. They always want to be able to project and see what the economy holds for them. Putting the foreign exchange, pegging it at 1,500 naira is something that also makes real sense, because, looking at what's been happening around the economy and what's been happening to the foreign exchange market, there's been that decline in recent times is about 1,600 and all of that. So I think that's fair enough. Increased oil production is something that is very important so that government can get more money. This budget, government wants to generate money internally, not borrowing and borrowing and borrowing. About 30-something trillion naira is what the president says they will generate. Now, let's look at the focus where we're talking about defense, security, infrastructure. That is where the president is focusing on. Some sectors got more money than they've ever gotten in decades. You understand? That is priority. Prioritized is whatever it wants to achieve. So looking at it, for importation of fuel, this is something that is coming up, and government is trying to make sure that all of this will stop. Debt servicing, government is trying to reduce all of this. So I think it's appropriate, it's well planned. All of the document is just perfect. Now let's look at targeting 3.89% in deficit. Yes, that's the figure. It means a lot. So if we look at all of this, and the clarity now that it is 49.7 trillion naira, that is the total of that budget, it shows that, yes, government really means what they are doing. And we start to see that there are positives already. Trade surplus is at 5.8 trillion naira as of today.
Okay, we'll take it from the trade surplus in just a moment. Let's bring in Joke Adisa, who was live there on ground watching the president make this presentation. And of course, she's been covering this over the years. Joke, talk to us about the mood in the National Assembly when the president presented that very ambitious document.
Well, thank you, Abosedi. The atmosphere then was certainly that of a conviviality. We saw the President of the Senate and the Speaker applauding the efforts of Mr. President so far, so much so that Mr. President acknowledged that much that he said he felt at home, and if not that he needed to perform the yearly ritual, he would just have gone home satisfied that yes, is working with like minds. So we saw that much, and we also saw how the leadership of the National Assembly did speak to the current situation in the country, the tax reform bills especially, and how they view it, describing it as the best thing that could happen to the nation. And so from all of these, the National Assembly leadership, of course, acknowledged the efforts that have been made and the successes that are being recorded. You spoke about the reduction in criminal activities, the reduction in the rate of kidnapping, and so many other things that this government has been able to do. But one thing that also came up is the fact that while the Senate has passed these tax reform bills for second reading and committees are working on them, the House says it is still consulting, it is still meeting with groups, individuals and all that to ensure that everybody is on the same page so that at the end of it all, they too have a smooth sail. And so generally it was an atmosphere of friendship, of love, and of dedication and commitment to work for the nation's interest. That was what we saw. Looking at the whole, even after the whole exercise, a number of members that were able to, a number of senators and members, National Assembly members that were able to speak to also acknowledge the fact that, yes, this government means well for the people, and that the only challenge that they have is achieving implementation. And so they are confident that if the budget is achieved, if implementation is achieved, certainly Nigerians will feel the impact of this budget, which has been termed very ambitious. The leadership of the House, of course, also mentioned the fact that, yes, it's ambitious, but it is commendable that Nigeria can, even in the first instance, take this step is commendable, and that the next thing to do is to work towards achieving this goal, achieving the aim of this budget, so that at the end of it all, it will be a win-win for all Nigerians.
All right, Joke. Let's now bring in Femi Akonde, our State House correspondent. Femi, what exactly is the mood in the presidency? You know, what could be in their mind with the president focusing on defense, infrastructure, education, and health?
Yes, hi, Wasade. For the president, these are key sectors that need to be developed. Hello?
Yes, Femi.
For the president, these are key sectors that, his administration has said that they are going to focus on. And, of course, understandably, defense and security, looking at the situation in the country, especially in terms of security in parts of the country like the Northwest, the Northeast, and even some parts of the South, where the security agencies have been challenged. The president is talking about increasing funding and education. He finds it very important.
We'll be back with Femi in a moment for more on what it really does feel like in the presidency as they move ahead with this presentation, and of course in the days ahead as we wait on the lawmakers to critically examine this document and pass a final draft to the president. Back to you, Joke, on this matter. We have been following a January to December budget cycle, which is something that's been exciting to analysts, economists, and the rest of them. But with this being presented on the 18th, are we able to still meet up with that? What have you heard in this regard?
Well, certainly not. The National Assembly will not spend maybe a week or two to approve a budget. It certainly will not happen. Some of the lawmakers did attest to that after the budget presentation. But one thing that the National Assembly has also been able to do is to say that it is extending the life of the 2024 budget, the implementation to June 2025. And so what that means is that there's no gap, there's no missing link. The budget continues to run while they work. At least that will give them the opportunity to work extensively on the appropriation bill for 2025 and be able to come up with a workable document that will suit the interest of Nigerians. But even with what has happened, even with this development, I'm sure the lawmakers, of course, are ready to hit the ground running. But of course, this is Juliet season that we are going. It's barely a week to Christmas, then 2 weeks to New Year and all that. So I'm sure it will be after. I think for this year, they have one more day to sit, which is tomorrow, except, of course, some other things change. But whatever it is, Nigeria, we may not be able to see that happen this time. But of course, it doesn't mean that there will be a lacuna by June, up to June. Of course, the budget will still be running.
All right, then. Let's come back to Tolulope here in the studio. Earlier, you were giving an analysis, talking about the priorities of the president. And of course, let's take it from there.
Yeah, indeed. When you look at the foreign reserves before President Tinubu came in, it wasn't looking too good. But as of today, despite the challenges, we are about $40 billion US. That is really commendable. I talked about trade surplus too. So that means that the reforms are already paying off. That's what it means. Yes, they need to look at some social intervention schemes, which are also instituted in this budget. So it looks very, 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 very promising, because what Nigerians need is to cushion the effect of the fallout of these economic policies, which the president reaffirmed today again, saying we are not going back. We are staying with these reforms. So clearly, I think if we continue this pace and all of the agricultural productivity is something the president also harped on, saying that we must increase production, and that's why they must also address insecurity, because so that people can go to the farms. So all of this encompassing in this document, it's clear that with proper implementation, with what we've had on ground, that means that Nigerians will definitely get the positives. If you look at this and the dollar rate, you will know that it's not really so large when you say 49.7 trillion naira. But in dollars, you see that it's not really large when you even look at what we had compared to what we had last year. But you will know that the government is determined and focused. Looking at these figures that we've seen today, I can say that practically at the end of the day, it should be light at the end of the tunnel. But implementation is key. Releasing of funds is key. Government agencies, federal government agencies must release funds so that people will be able to actualize all of this. And so that it doesn't take towards the end of the year before they start to get this funding. It affects implementation. And when there's no proper implementation, you won't get what you're supposed to get at the end of the day. So I think that looking at what we have, targeting 3.8, reducing deficit and all of that, reducing borrowings and all of that, which the government is trying, the tax bill is there, which is supposed to also help, create more avenue for government to make money, state government to make more money, local government autonomy is there now. Local governments can even do more than they used to do. I think all of this would work well for this 2025 budget. Timeliness is also key. I know the senators and the House of Representatives members would attest to this in very good time.
All right, then, Tolu, I was really going to ask you about inflation figures.
Yes, from 34% to 15%. That is really interesting, very ambitious. But I think that if all of these social safety things are being done and people are cushioning the effect of the fallout of these reforms, fuel price, you see there's a reduction in the price of fuel now, and more of that will come because it's a deregulated market. Right. So when all of this starts to come in, inflation will definitely start to taper down. All right,
Tolu will stay optimistic. Tolu Lokpa is business editor. Thank you very much for being there. Femi Akonde, State House correspondent. Thank you. And Joke Adisa, a National Assembly correspondent. Thank you for that update from your beats there.